Have you ever stopped to wonder who actually decides what you pay at the pharmacy counter when your health is on the line? I mean, it's so easy to just hand over our prescriptions, right? But behind the scenes, there is this massive, incredibly complex balancing act happening every single day.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the April 2024 newsletter from India's National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority, or the NPPA. We're going to unpack exactly how they're tackling two of the most massive healthcare crises of our time: the terrifying rise of unstoppable superbugs and the skyrocketing costs of chronic diseases. Here's our roadmap for today. Section 1, the Medicine Price Watchdog. 2, the Silent Pandemic, AMR. 3, fighting antimicrobial resistance. 4, the burden of NCDs. And finally, 5, making life-saving drugs affordable. Let's get right into it.
Section 1, the Medicine Price Watchdog. Okay, so think of their 2013 regulatory framework almost like a strict VIP list for drug affordability. It runs on 3 key principles. First up is essentiality. They only regulate drugs that are heavily relied upon, the ones sitting on the national list of essential medicines. Second, formulations only. This means they regulate the final price you actually pay at the counter, not the raw, bulk ingredients. And third, market-based pricing. So instead of looking at factory production costs, the ceiling prices are anchored to actual real-world market data.
Section 2, the Silent Pandemic, AMR. Now, without urgent action against antimicrobial resistance, or AMR, we could very soon enter what's called a pre-antibiotic era. That's a world where common infections and routine medical procedures become basically impossible to treat. Experts define AMR as the emergence of highly drug-resistant, clinically relevant pathogens that threaten to completely overwhelm our healthcare facilities. In plain terms, the medicines are literally stopping working because the pathogens are adapting.
To really grasp the gravity of this, just consider this staggering number. Bacterial AMR alone caused 1.27 million deaths worldwide in just 2019. This isn't some distant sci-fi movie threat. It is happening right now, silently taking over 1 million lives every single year. And here is the crazy part. This is fundamentally a man-made problem. It's a dangerous, continuous cycle of indiscriminate antibiotic use spanning human healthcare, livestock agriculture, and even untreated sewage. When antibiotics are just everywhere in our environment, pathogens are constantly exposed to them. They mutate, they evolve, and they survive this selection pressure, creating these highly resistant, terrifying strains. And for India in particular, this threat is incredibly urgent. The data points out 2 massive threats: tuberculosis, and a notorious group of highly resistant bacteria known as the escape pathogens, which are severely limiting our treatment options. India actually carries roughly 25% of the global TB burden. We're seeing multi-drug resistant strains that just brush off standard drugs and extensively drug-resistant strains that are even harder to kill. Even when new drugs get approved, rapid resistance is already being reported. It's quite literally a race against time.
Section 3, fighting antimicrobial resistance.
So, how do we fight back? Well, halting this requires massive coordination. Through the 2017 Delhi Declaration, India mapped out 6 actionable steps. They committed to increasing awareness and education, tightening up surveillance, and introducing strict prevention strategies. Crucially, they focused on optimizing antibiotic use across both human health and agriculture. And finally, because the pipeline for brand new antibiotics is nearly exhausted, they highlighted the desperate need for huge investments in R&D and international collaboration.
Section 4, the burden of NCDs. Switching gears to another massive crisis, non-communicable diseases, or NCDs. We're talking about things like heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. These are a global epidemic, killing approximately 41 million people worldwide every single year. That is a mind-blowing 71% of all global deaths. And unlike infections, these diseases are often long-term, slow-progressing, and require continuous, lifelong medical care. Naturally, that brings an enormous financial burden.
Bringing this global crisis back home translates to a massive localized burden. In India alone, nearly 5.8 million people die from NCDs annually. To put that into perspective, 1 in 4 Indians has a risk of dying from an NCD before they even reach the age of 70. This translates to a considerable loss in potentially productive years of life for millions of people, imposing a severe socioeconomic burden on families and the country as a whole.
So,
How is the NPPA responding to this? Very aggressively. Over the past decade, out of nearly 2,800 new drug retail price fixations, a massive 83% were dedicated solely to treating NCDs. Compare that to only 14% going to communicable diseases and 3% to miscellaneous items like vitamins. The watchdog's focus is undeniably clear. They are prioritizing the affordability of chronic disease management.
Section 5. Making life-saving drugs affordable. You can really see this intense focus on affordability when you look at anti-diabetic drugs over the last 12 years. There was a huge surge in price approvals right around 2022 and 2023. Why? Well, that happened because several key patented anti-diabetic drugs finally expired. The NPPA immediately stepped in and notified retail prices for these now off-patent drugs, making sure the market was quickly flooded with affordable options for people.
Let's actually break those numbers down a bit more. In total, they have intervened on thousands of NCD treatments. We're talking 1,005 anti-diabetic formulations, 502 cardiovascular formulations, 153 antihypertensives, and 53 anti-cancer formulations. By stepping in and regulating these prices, the NPPA is making sure that long-term therapies for chronic conditions don't lead to absolute financial ruin for patients.
To make this totally concrete, let's look at a real-world example. Vildagliptin combined with metformin. It's a very common daily treatment for type 2 diabetes. During its patent period, it cost up to 27 rupees a tablet, but the moment it came under NPPA regulation post-patent, the price plunged down to just 7 to 9 rupees per tablet. When you're taking a pill every single day, that kind of reduction is an absolute game changer for a family's budget. Or take a look at this one, another staggering example. Dapagliflozin plus metformin. While it was patented, it sat at a steep 56 to 57 rupees per tablet. Under the NPPA regulated price, it dropped to a mere 11 to 12 rupees. This regulatory capping slashed the cost of a crucial daily medication by nearly 80%, fundamentally transforming patient access basically overnight. So, we're left with this really fascinating tension. On the one hand, we desperately need massive financial investments in R&D to invent new antibiotics to fight the terrifying biological threat of antimicrobial resistance. But on the other hand, regulatory bodies like the NPPA have to ensure that once these life-saving drugs are actually created, they don't financially devastate the people who need them the most. So, how do we fund the vital innovation needed to beat the superbugs tomorrow, while still guaranteeing the resulting medicines remain affordable for all today? Think about that, and we'll see you in the next Explain It.